It took me a little while to get into the Wolfenstein series, a great one if you ask me. My only knowledge of the series before machine games took a new direction was Wolfenstein 3D, the 1992 original, and I wish I would have played the New Order back when it was released. I bought the first two, the New Order and the Old Blood, and I left New Colossus alone for a while. It was significantly pricey and so it has mixed reviews, as well as countless posts, videos and more about how it glorified communism and was a social justice circus. Before we go any further, no, this video is not about politics or social issues as you may have read. This video is where I'll go over the criticism that this game gets regarding what I mentioned before, a general analysis as well as some minor things. This game is not perfect by any means, I'll talk about that a little bit later. But we'll start by addressing the elephant in the room, the controversy, and we'll start with this particular character. There's a character in this game named Horton that alludes to communism in a couple of occasions, one being where BJ goes to New Orleans to recruit this group of survivors and he takes his sweet little time to yell at BJ while they drink homemade alcohol in the middle of a shooting. Second being later on where Horton is seen wearing a party hat in BJ's birthday party with the communist symbol, and he also has a couple of posters in his room with the same symbol. Now, a thing I frequently hear or at least I heard before playing Wolfenstein 2 was that the game somehow promotes communism, and I personally think this is the wrong idea. Bloodsquicks clearly disagrees with him and lets him know in that particular conversation during the drinking scene. BJ is a man that has been fighting since he was 18, and Horton literally does nothing in the game. He is the leader of that particular group of survivors and they ultimately join and work together, but that doesn't mean BJ agrees with him. As I said before, he makes that real clear when arguing with him. Horton supporting that doesn't mean that the game directly promotes communism. As many have stated, BJ doesn't like fascism and gives his opinion on Marxists in the game, and it is not a positive one. BJ is pro-Americana and pro-capitalist, and there is no evidence that our protagonist is a commie. Now, there's another character in this game. Her name is Grace and she's extremely unlikable, and I personally think that was the whole point of this character. When she joins the resistance, she starts giving orders, quickly moves into Caroline's own room, zero respect for the lady. The other members didn't occupy it as soon as she passed out due to respect. She's unnecessarily vulgar and rude towards absolutely everyone, despite the resistance providing weapons, food and shelter, help, etc. She is in fact super annoying. Now, this clearly doesn't go unpunished. BJ again doesn't 100% agrees with her. They argue in the helicopter on the way to the U-boat. Sigrun Engel, the daughter of General Frau Engel, is constantly being called a Nazi despite her standing out to her mother, rebelling against the Nazi regime, and killing her mother's own men to save BJ and either Wyatt or Fergus. Near the end of the game, Grace is very rude towards Sigrun, even after she decoded Odin's security code, but she grabs Grace and starts choking her. She puts Grace in her place, basically saying, "Hey, stop being such a jerk, you've been very rude, stop it." Clearly not in that way, but you get the point. What I mean is that despite Grace making very unlikable comments in the penthouse after meeting BJ and being rude to basically everyone except her people and her husband, someone puts an end to her bad attitude, and despite Grace claiming to be such a good person, she literally smokes a cigarette next to her baby, which in my opinion was the whole point of the scene, to show how hypocrite she can be. And she blames men in a couple of occasions, but she depends on BJ to do the hard work, and she's after all married to a white man named Norman. Another argument that can be said on Grace's favor is that she wants to ignite a flame in the resistance members. She doesn't want a melancholic, depressed fighter like BJ, she wants a capable, reliable people. That's why she's rude and overall super annoying to absolutely everyone, and I think it worked. If you think about it, Sigrun Engel became more confident and assertive by making fun of Fergus. He now has more faith in himself, and it kept BJ more focused on fighting the good fight rather than, "Hey, I'm old and I'm weak and I'm dying, hey Caroline, lend me your wings," which is not bad, but I think she just wanted strong members. But on the other hand, she could have done it differently, by actually communicating in a proper way, by not being such a jerk and insensitive to almost everyone except her annoying and unfunny husband, but nevertheless that's what we got. And no matter how much I try to rationalize why Grace is such a jerk, I still don't like her. But I suppose the argument that we are fighting Nazis, we don't have to like each other, we are just here to free the world from an oppressive leadership, can be said. Actually, it is that. Briefly going back to Horton, nobody but him and his people agree with his communist ideas, and no one has to like it, they're just together because they're fighting the Nazis. And the famous dialogue that BJ says at the top of the penthouse in New York after recruiting Grace's group Come on, freaking get me, you white ass fascist Nazi pigs. Well, a little bit over the top and arguably unnecessary, VJ technically isn't wrong. A lot of white Americans joined the right. VJ's dad was also a Nazi, and he sold out his wife to the Nazis, and then joined them once they took cover. And the KKK exists in this 1960 occupied America of the Wolfenstein timeline, so like I said, technically not wrong. But I think they could have avoided the extra controversy by not including this dialogue. It was funny, but they could have avoided everything. And finally, here's the deal with William's dad, Rip Blazkowicz. Now, when I first played the new Colossus, I immediately was surprised by the approach Machine Games took. This game is way more personal than the New Order or the Old Blood. The game starts strong by showing us how horrible VJ's dad is. He treats his wife with no respect, he's violent towards his family, and he's a racist and a homophobe. Now, the only problem I have with this concept is that in previous games, when BJ talks about his life and his father, it seems like they were good memories, at least that's how I got it. In the Old Blood, when talking with Annette, he says, "Hey, my father will call me Billy Boy," but it sounded more like fond memories rather than sad or bad ones. Same with the New Order, and they did a good job by keeping these moments very brief and unclear, because that allowed Machine Games to go with this idea. While many people considered this thing was way over the top and unnecessary, I think this was a good approach in the end. At first you get this bad feeling about the game because of its bad publicity, at least I did. But like I said, Wolfenstein 2 is more of a personal approach, at least for the first half of the game. BJ is sad, broken, tired, dying, and now he remembers his father, the farmhouse where he grew up, his mother, the engagement ring, and this reminds us that BJ is not only an unstoppable Nazi killing machine, but also that he's a human being. A 50-year-old man that has been fighting since he was a kid, a soldier, and soon a father, someone who has made very tough decisions throughout his life, and he's afraid that he's not going to be there to raise his kids, to help out Anya. He's scared, and if I were dying, I will also get a little nostalgic or sad, you know. He's carrying the guilt of leaving his mom behind. We can experience that in the dream courthouse level of not confronting his father, and even though he knows going to the farmhouse in Mesquite, Texas, it's a bad idea, and that his father will most likely be there because he joined the Nazis, and that he will know when BJ got back to the States, his old farmhouse will be the perfect spot for an ambush, but he still goes there. Rip Blazkowicz was a despicable and horrible man, certainly a terrible father, a failure of a man who blamed it all on his family, but that ultimately showed BJ that you gotta keep fighting, to not be a failure like his father was, to fight for what's good, to stand up for the little guy, so on and so forth. So no, I don't think BJ's father being this way was a mistake. He was an opportunist. Sounds right and likely that he joined the Nazi army. And another thing worth pointing out is the small moments where Rip shows little affection toward his son. When he called him Billy Boy, when he gave him that BB gun to fight the monsters in the basement, those little moments contrast with the horrible and violent nature of VJ's father. Another thing that can be said is how hypocrite he can be as well. He punishes his son when some kids bully him and steal his pocket knife that he gave him. He punishes him for letting people step on him and let them take his property, for not defending what belongs to him. Yet when the Nazis took over, he didn't fight back. It's the same thing, it's just a different scenario. They took what belonged to him, his country, his freedom, his people. He didn't fight back, he just obeyed like he was nothing. The only complaint I do have with this particular game, with the story, is the dog scene. Look, I kind of understand the motives behind his father's actions, while not justified and 100% bad. Of course, it's just absolutely terrible. He's like that because he's frustrated and angry and can't accept that he's wrong, you know, that he failed, so he blames it on his family like an scapegoat, and he's trying to raise his kid the way he thinks is correct. Again, not justified, but the dog scene, I mean, come on, he does it so he can show BJ that he's going to lose things in life and that he has to be a man because life is tough. But how is killing the dog going to help out? That's just going to leave some psychological trauma rather than helping BJ, and I think it was a little bit unnecessary, or it could have been avoided at least. Seems like shock value more than anything to me. The other things are okay in my opinion, well, not okay in a moral way, but that it fits with what they were going for. And BJ's father, like Grace, gets what he deserves. Of course, Grace only gets choked and insulted, but BJ's dad gets justice and revenge in the form of a bloody execution. Also, the way BJ is perfectly calm in the room while his father is aiming at him with a double-barrel shotgun and insulting him, and how BJ stands right in front of the barrels, show how he's not afraid anymore, how he's going to fight no matter what. A little thing worth pointing out is that when we first start this game, we are presented with two abusive parental figures, that being Fro Engel and Rip Blazkowicz, and how they are very bad people, you know? And as soon as we get to the main base of operations, the U-boat that we captured in the previous game, we are presented with a similar situation. Bombate is telling Max that they must kill the pig because they're running out of food. Mac quickly gets agitated and angry, and Bombate is also quick and says, "Hey, look, it's alright, we don't have to kill her now, we'll figure something out, Max, don't worry." And also everyone in the boat at first are very nice and kind. Everyone is happy to see BJ, and a lot of people sacrifice their lives just to save BJ. We are shown two abusive people that are supposed to be family, and then as we step in the U-boat, as soon as the game starts, we are shown kindness and friendship to establish that this is a real family in some way. But what's the deal with everything? A couple of characters being this way doesn't mean that this game is focused on social justice or promotes communism, or that it is left-wing propaganda or is just a social critique. Wolfenstein is a game about killing Nazis. Wolfenstein 2 is a game about liberating Nazi-occupied America, about resistance, and another chapter in the long fight of Captain William Joseph Blazkowicz. Nazis were bad, let's not forget that, alright? Before I move on to the gameplay-focused topics, I want to address one more thing: the marketing campaign for this game. Bethesda and Machine Games claim two things. Machine Games, being the developer, said that they wanted the game to be timeless and completely divorced from current events. And on the other side, Bethesda, a representative named Pete Hines, stated this: "The game and its content were well along the path to completion, and no one from Machine Games or Bethesda could have predicted Nazis marching down American streets in 2017. Even talking about it now seems ludicrous. From a marketing standpoint, we certainly saw an opportunity to take a stand against these events while also talking about the game we're making, which is about killing Nazis and overthrowing the rule in the US. We have an open dialogue with the team at Machine Games. The fact that there is now a political and social climate, particularly here in the US, is something we've talked about. We are not going to hide from the fact that our game is about killing Nazis and freeing the US from their rule. And if we can reference current events and as a part of talking about the game, so be it. Nazis are evil. We are not afraid to remind people that." The new Colossus was not written to be a commentary on current events. With things being the way they are, having a healthy and safe avenue to vent some of the frustrations is a good thing, and we hope Wolfenstein 2 can be a way to do that for folks. That said, the man in response to the criticism regarding the campaign. Now, while I do agree that politics and video games don't really get along, and if you're going to introduce or mix that in your game, it should be subtle and not in your face. But here I want to make an exception. I think Bethesda saw the Nazi March in 2017 as an opportunity to market their game, as Pete said, too good to pass. It came just in time to be paired with a game about fighting the Nazi regime, and I don't blame them for taking that road. They're a company. While I get why it makes people mad, or to a certain degree unpleased. Like Pete said, remember, it is Nazis we are talking about, and I'll have to agree with him. Nazis are bad, let's not forget that. And at the same time, in defense of Wolfenstein 2, when it comes to the so-called SJW moments in this game that a lot of people can't seem to get out of their heads, these are Nazis we're talking about. People, let's fight them and that's it, you know? Now that I'm done with the controversial topics, I want to address some other things such as the story, gameplay, level design, etc. The story of Wolfenstein 2 is not only a sequel to The New Order, the next step on taking down the Nazis, it is also a deep dive into BJ Blazkowicz's life, his past, the aggravating and sad present, and the unknown future. The first half of the game is about finding peace with ourselves, about coping with traumatic events, about being humane, about coming to terms that BJ may not live to see his kids grow, about fighting against all odds. And the last half is about being reborn, quite literally, and keep fighting for a better future. Now, I really like the story, but I think it has two particular problems: the tone and how it changes atmosphere real quickly. This can be super awkward sometimes. For example, when Anya and BJ are having a discussion about BJ, about how he's dying, and Anya says that he can know for sure, etc. Super Spesh comes out of the bathroom with a super awkward and unfunny joke to ruin the moment. Look, I get that this game has more comedy than the New Order, and that the purpose of this moment was to break the tension and show how Grace and Spesh's relationship is something that Anya and BJ should aspire to, a much healthier relationship in this revolution. But why the joke? Why that moment? Should have let them argue for a little bit, then quietly in the background show Grace and Spesh kissing or something so Anya and BJ stop arguing, but not because of a weird bathroom joke, but because they saw a couple doing better than them. And Wolfenstein 2 has more moments like this. Another thing I thought was a little bit of wasted potential was Fergus and Wyatt. The game should have had more friendship moments with this. Fergus and BJ know each other for some time. Wyatt and BJ became friends after the events of the New Order. Why limit these personalities to just, oh, my new robotic hand doesn't work and it does funny things, look. And hey, I just discovered acid and I think it's great. Fergus is more interesting and cool in my opinion, but both are to some degree walking memes, which, don't get me wrong, they are funny, but I just think they deserve much more than that. On the other hand, one thing I thought was great is how they handled the U-boat. Films lived in, filled with colorful characters and cool conversations to listen to, as well as fun activities to do. And last but not least, something that I thought was a little bit disappointing was the last boss should have been triangling a giant robot just like in the first game. But I also think that the final scene of the game when you basically tear her face apart is just amazing, but just pointing that out. Now for the game itself, from a gameplay perspective, it's not bad. I had a really good time with the new Colossus. The new weapons are great, and we also have all ones that were present in the Old Blood and the New Order. Weapon animations, models, textures, and the ability to upgrade your weapons is great. The perk system is still as basic as in the previous entries, but it keeps things simple and fun. You'll get perks basically by just playing. The game focuses on 2 or 3 playstyles, depends. The classic stealth, there are as usual perk-oriented things for that, silencers and unique contraptions, the mayhem-like style for people who love to run around with an assault rifle and a shotgun in each hand and don't take their time with alarms, guns blazing all the way. And the final one, more of a tactical approach, let's say. For that we have scopes and semi-auto rifles. Although I have to say that we have a mediocre contraption and we don't have a proper high caliber sniper rifle like in the Old Blood. That would have been really cool. Contraptions are abilities that fit your particular playstyle, and you can get them mid-game, but you eventually get them all, which is kind of not what I expected, and just eventually you'll get everything, that's what I'm saying, so just don't take it too seriously. Speaking of mid-game, a huge complaint that people have is how for the first half we are forced to play with 50 health and 200 armor, and for the other, a more balanced 100-100. And there's no way to modify our health and armor value. While it is a little bit strange at first, ultimately it's more immersive, since for the first half BJ is wounded but has a super suit, and for the last part things go back to normal, with a fresh new body but less armor. It's a really good first person shooter experience in my personal opinion. Fits to 3 different playstyles, feels natural and good. The enemies are also great. We got a new selection of robots and large enemies, as well as the classic Nazis, and while the AI can be improved in my opinion, higher difficulties feel more normal. Except for Over, which is extreme. I've been trying to complete the game for an entire month, and this difficulty forces you to stick to crates and covers 90% of the time, or else you'll die in a couple of seconds and have to start all over, which is kind of annoying, because a small little detail is that cutscenes are basically unskippable, which is annoying for us that have been attempting an over playthrough. The level design, while not as good as in previous games, the atmosphere and the overall appearance of the levels and stuff and the design is really cool. More memorable, at least to me. I think that we got really cool levels, but also levels like the underground section of Roswell, the ruins of Manhattan, and finally the sewer parts of Orleans can be really repetitive and generic and boring to some degree. Now for the conclusion. Like I've said before, this game is not perfect by any means, but I think it's a good sequel to the Wolfenstein games, and a great chapter in the story of BJ Blazkowicz, an excellent shooter, and finally not what many people say it is like, not what many people paint it like to be. It has good moments and bad moments, and in my opinion we shouldn't let controversial or political stuff to mess with the experience of our games. We shouldn't let rant videos mess with the experience of our games. But anyways, guys, I'm Dead Fox, and I hope you enjoyed this very long video. I'm sorry about that, but I just had to include everything that I mentioned before. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have a wonderful day.